Trustees, October 18th, 2017 meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Malcheski?
Present.
Mr. Galloway?
I'm here.
Mrs. Luda?
Here.
Okay, approval of the October 4th, 2017 regular trustees meeting. Connie?
I had one typo. It was the spelling of Auburn Road on page 2,
Auburn Road typo, page 2.
under Concord Law Enforcement.
Okay, Chris, anything?
Oh, yeah. I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman. It's fine by me.
Okay. Then we'll pass those. Elected officials report. Anything, Connie?
No.
Chris?
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial to address some of the stuff that I think a lot of folks are here for tonight. And it might ease some minds. As we all know, last month the Board of Zoning Appeals met to consider a conditional use application from Riverside Local Schools for the purposes of gaining permission to build a elementary school on State Route 608. The Board of Zoning Appeals denied that conditional use permit application on a 4-0 vote. There's been a lot of talk in terms of social media and other things sort of floating around, and I'd like to just sort of point out that first, the Board of Zoning Appeals is a fully autonomous board. They are appointed by the trustees to 5-year terms. However, they are fully autonomous of this body, and under Ohio Revised Code, they meet to consider conditional use permits. Any conditional use permit that is applied for within the township is heard before the Board of Zoning Appeals, not the Board of Trustees. There's been some discussion as to what transpires when it comes time for an appeal as it relates to a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I noted in today's statement from Riverside, it indicated that Concord Township does not allow appeals process for zoning decisions. That's not Concord Township's rule. That's Ohio Revised Code. That applies to all 1,308 townships in the state of Ohio. So therefore, any decision of the BZA, be it somebody wants to put a shed closer to a property line, is required. The only appeal process under Ohio Revised Code is therefore in the Court of Common Pleas. So I know that I can tell you that this board tonight is taking no action on anything because there is no action for this board to take on anything that transpired with the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting in September. Let me step back and make a personal statement as it relates to all of this. I have been always very supportive of Riverside Schools, its mission, its goals. I'm a former member of the Melridge PTO. In 2016, when the district was working hard on passing the bond issue that was being put forth so that we could have these new facilities in our community, I endorsed that. I supported it. My quote specifically that I provided to the folks that were campaigning on behalf of it was, "Concord Township is one of the best places to live in Northeast Ohio. It's time our educational facilities reflect the standards and expectations of our community. Providing our children with state-of-the-art learning facilities is the least we can do. We are either a premier community that believes in educational excellence, or we are not. It's that simple. And I stand by that statement to this very day. Support Riverside's mission to build new facilities, because I know how much that means to the teachers that have worked so hard to pass that levy, those levies and that bond issue. I know how important it is to the students who go to school every day in those facilities. And I know how important it is to those parents who pay the taxes on those levies like that bond issue. So I just want to let you know that this board, and myself included, fully support that mission. Now, I think there's a lot of discussion as to the how and the why we ended up at this point. Now, I can't speak to the specifics of the BZA and their decision-making process, their decision-making matrix that evening. I don't think it would be proper for me to speculate, as we have pending litigation that's been filed by Riverside. I can tell you that in my opinion, there's a good deal of misinformation out there as to relates to the role of the trustees. I consider Riverside a friend, and for the last year and a half had worked with members of the administration of the school board at looking at sites in Concord Township to find a proper place for an elementary school. And we'd had many meetings, many phone calls, and looking at different locations where they could potentially locate this school. I can tell you that I learned of the decision to purchase the property on Route 608 on December 7th, that morning, when it was posted to the Riverside Facebook page that the location had been chosen for the new elementary school, and it was on State Route 608. That was the first time that I had learned that that was a location that was going to be chosen. That was on December 7th. We had a meeting planned for several days later, administrator, myself, and others, with the school district that we had been organizing as part of that process of discussing locations that the school district could locate to. And so the township communicated to the school board, apparently you've made a decision. Our meeting, 3-4 days, exactly when it was, is clearly no longer needed. And so, I guess we'll go ahead and cancel the meeting. Now, Riverside did ask to then have a subsequent meeting based on this new location. Fast forward. There's a lot of talk about the land purchase, what the township said or didn't say. I can tell you that I do take some umbrage with some of the items in this statement that was issued today, in that it is clear under the Concord Township zoning that any applicant for a conditional use permit must follow sections 13.05 and 1310 of the zoning code. This applies to any use coming before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And there's sort of I believe, an attempt to sort of make it seem like, well, the township didn't tell us we needed to do that. There are emails and there's documentation that is not accurate. That in fact, that was provided. And in fact, the application that was submitted to the township referenced the entire section 13. On top of that, the actual meeting notice that was placed in the News Herald referenced sections 1305 and 1310. The actual legal notice then issued by the township referenced sections 1305 and 1310. The agenda that evening referenced sections 1305 and 1310. And then the application itself from Riverside via the applicant of Fanning Howing Associates, they were the ones who filled it out, referenced section 13 as their section that they would be looking to follow. So I think it's very clear that everybody knew the different elements of the zoning code for any applicant that need to be followed. And I think it's important as a township that the zoning code be followed regardless of who the applicant is. And we apply these standards to churches, businesses, residences. And again, I'm somewhat restricted because I can't talk about, necessarily my opinions or, those types of things as it relates to the how and the why the BZA made the decision they did. But I would point out, as it relates to the township trustees, this board, it was not this board that chose that site. This board was not advised of that site prior to it being chosen. This board did not hire the architectural design firm that designed the site plan, the preliminary site plan. It was not this board that has any part of the process of the zoning, the conditional use permit zoning application process. Subsequent to the BZA's denial, I did reach out to Jennifer Harden, who is the Riverside president, asked to meet with her because I thought it was important that as one elected official to another elected official, we have a discussion about how we can avoid the very moment that we're at now. And we discussed it, and I know there's been talk about, the township pitched the idea of a land swap. I'd like to address that, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I did propose that, and I proposed that. That was what, 3 days after the BZA meeting. That was an idea that I came up with after that decision because it was a matter of trying to find a way to help Riverside be able to continue with the process to build the school. I acknowledged then to Jennifer, and I acknowledge now to you that yes, there hadn't been in that 48 hours of me pulling out and running a map and talking to staff and seeing, whether or not the size of the property and whether or not there was availability of sewers would be applicable. Obviously, that was 48 hours, but that was an attempt by us to try to find a way for us to come up with a solution that didn't involve litigation. It didn't involve, neighbor against neighbor over an issue like this, because nobody wants that. And I can say, there needs to be studies of it. There needs to be a wetland study, an environmental study, a geotech study, a phase 1. Those are all things that can be done in pretty good, short order. And I still leave on the table, from my perspective, a willingness to engage in a discussion with Riverside about something of that nature, doing a land swap. If it's not a land swap, I'm happy to sit and meet with Riverside at any point to talk about location that might work well for them in any way we can help facilitate, the same way we had done the year prior to this process. My concerns about the site on 608 and it not having sewer, because I had somebody ask me the other day, they said, well, if you didn't like that site personally, why didn't you come out and, make a statement in the press? Why didn't you say something? And I said, because I'm supportive of Riverside. And just because I, myself as a citizen, may not think that that's the best location, I'm not ever going to step forward and sort of muddy the waters or poison the well and say, well, no, everybody has to agree with me. I'm not a site expert when it comes to locating schools, and I acknowledge that. And so I don't feel that it would have been proper for an elected official to come out and sort of criticize in a public fashion another public entity's attempt to locate on a location like that. Now, do I personally think it's not the best location? I don't. But I also, because of that support of Riverside, I'm not going to go forward and say something like that in a public manner And again, my concerns about it were, well, listen, I'm talking about prior to the BZA and prior to this process. There's been a lot of, casting of aspersions, and so there comes a point when you have to say, that's my personal opinion. But at no point during this process was I going to try to, scuttle their process and let them go through the process that they wanted to go through. It was their decision. And so I think it's important to note that my friendship with Riverside, involved me, not coming out and sharing my personal opinion on something like that. And I hope that reflects in terms of being, being professional about it. So yes, I still remain very interested in working with the school board on finding a solution to this matter. I am disturbed by the effort to sort of lay this at the feet of the trustees who had no official capacity in this process, other than to give, advice when asked on locations that were being looked at. And so what I want to say to all of you, and I think a lot of you are parents and teachers, is that we are committed to that. We remain supportive of Riverside, and we would like to figure out a way to get you into a new school in a way that works for the community and works for Riverside. And so, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you giving me that opportunity to say this. I know that was sort of lengthy, but I felt like maybe that would.
Well, listen, I will tell you as this chair, I agree with your comments. I will tell you that the complaint that's filed and the judge that we have is going to have us sit down, whether we like it or not. But I will tell you, it is my belief that the best thing to do is sit down and have lengthy discussions, whether they're controlled by the court or whether they're controlled by the parties themselves. But probably the most important thing I think, and everybody needs to understand, is that my concern would always be for, in the back of my mind, Concord Township as a whole, the students of Riverside as a whole, and I will tell you, I have a special admiration for the teachers, because my position is that they have provided excellent education to those students throughout the Riverside district. But importantly, they've also had a huge grassroots effort in passing levies and passing this bond issue. And it's, in my view, they don't really care what occurred or didn't occur. They just want new schools, and I'm very cognizant of that. I think they need to know that we're very cognizant of that, and that's, if that's at our feet and that's what we have to do, and that's something that's now on our plate because of this matter, then that's what we'll do.
And I agree. I'm very supportive of the entire family of Riverside Schools, the teachers, the students, the parents. And as you know, that one of the sites that they looked at was my property. And I was not willing to sell at that time. So.
Thank you, Kenny. Kathy, is there anything that
Amy's here looking for her ability to.
I'm sorry. I'm
not sure add on your current discussion, or just because I have a few things that
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, fiscal officer. I guess I was down here already, and it's
You jumped. Okay, so last Friday, I attended the Northeast Ohio Regional Advisory Board meeting for the Auditor of State. On behalf of Concord Township, we discussed credit card reform and some new accounting rules that came up. On behalf of the Lake County Board of Elections, Lake County Board of Elections is looking for additional election workers. I believe I asked a staff member to post it on our website today, but please, if you're interested in that, they need more than 900 people for the November election. So please contact the Lake County Board of Elections if you're interested.
Let me put a plug in that. That is an awesome experience. If anybody gets a chance to work for the Board of Elections and you choose to do that, it's really neat. It's very educational, and you would be very proud of your Lake County Board of Elections. So please.
And you do get paid.
Yes,
Yes.
it's $150 for the day.
You get paid for the day, and I tell you, you come away with an appreciation for the process, but also a great insight into how they safeguard our elections. You see a lot of talk on internet about, hacking, and, you can't trust the vote.
Right.
When you actually are a part of it and you go through it, you realize how many safeguards and duplication of those safeguards are in place and how professional they are. So I echo Paul's comments on that. That's true.
Okay. They also received correspondence from the Ohio Secretary of State this week. There are 2 statewide issues on the ballots, and the 2017 State Issues Report, which includes official ballot language, explanation, arguments for and against, and the full text of the issues is posted on their website at www.ohiosecretaryofstate.gov. Then click on the Know the Statewide Issues button. And then finally, cemetery news reminder, please remove all of your summer decorations before November 1st. These include planters, urns, shepherd's hooks, anything dangling or hanging. We will remove them if you do not. So it's time to winterize. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Kathy, anything to report?
I have no report.
You want to do business before we get audience? Connie, you have a preference?
I have no preference.
Doesn't matter to me if you want to. Our only business is these couple items. Go ahead.
All right, we'll just skip into our new business, and then we'll come back to audience in a sec. Looking for a vote on the Service Department Resolution 2017-29, authorizing the preparation and submission of an application to the OPWC for Christian Avenue and Jason Avenue reconstruction project.
I will so move.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote on Fire Department Resolution 2017-30 to auction obsolete items. Again, that's for the fire department.
It's not just for the fire
It's
department,
actually
it's for
everyone.
all of town hall.
Yep.
Okay, well, then we gotta amend that.
Yep. Well, no,
No, it's,
Well, it's just on the agenda.
it's on the
that way.
agenda.
I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve 2017-30 to auction obsolete items.
let me read it. Okay? Resolution declaring certain personal property of the Concord Township surplus and not needed for a public purpose and obsolete and unfit for the use which the property was acquired, and approving the sale of the property by public auction. And I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Chief, I see you through the door.
Come on in.
We have your PO, number 70-2017, the amount of $663,449.65 for Suffin fire truck, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we're going to buy a new fire truck.
Yep.
We are buying a new fire truck. This comes after a couple of years of planning and aging equipment. This is a specialty piece of equipment. This isn't just a fire truck. This is a rescue pumper that will be responsible for responding to car crashes. The equipment that it'll carry will be instrumental in assisting in allowing the firefighters to effect rescues on Interstate 90, 44, or actually any crash within township limits. We've seen some bigger crashes on 90, and we need to make sure we have the apparatus to be able to respond to those. Our maintenance costs on our current equipment has tripled. We normally spend $20,000 a year on maintenance. We're projected to spend about $84,000 this year on maintenance of this aging equipment. So
It's untenable.
the cost of ownership is exceeding, so we're in the need to replace.
And this is I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to make the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would actually just like to point out that this is actually doing it now versus waiting until after November 1st.
Correct. There is a
is
price increase
Right.
after November 1st, which is significant, and because of the planning that we put in place to get this done, paying for it all up front, we're able to save an additional $17,000.
Okay, so I move that we approve purchase order number 70-2017 in the amount of $663,449.65 to Sutphen for the purchase of a fire apparatus.
And I will second that and point out proudly that Sutphen is an Ohio company that makes these vehicles in Ohio.
Right.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I would also, subsequent to that, make a motion to enter into agreement for the purchase of the Sutphen fire apparatus, and a specific motion beyond the actual PO itself.
Okay. Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chief, I got one question for you while you're up there. With
Sure, thank
respect to your questions with regards to the intersection of 44 and Auburn, that would be the new intersection that's out there by Red Hawk. Have you been able to contact the Ohio State Patrol and determine where we're at with regards to accidents this year on that?
Yes, I reached out to the Ohio State Highway Patrol, and he responded that the accidents are actually decreasing in that area over the last 2 years. We've seen a reduction in crashes, no reported fatalities, and a split between damage accident only and injury accident.
That's excellent.
And that reports, the OSP keeps that?
Yes, Ohio State Highway Patrol accumulates all the crash data for the state of Ohio. So it's regardless of who is the responding agency.
All right, thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. Any other questions for Chief?
No, but you need to go ahead as chairman, sign that.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Chief. I think there's 2 places.
All right. That will take us to our audience portion. We have, we have the fire department, I guess, open section over there is filled as well. So we're going to make a switch with the group in here and the group out there at one point. But I will allow 3 minutes for your comments. I'll keep it on a timer. I apologize for that. It's not to limit you in any way except for the fact that we do have a lot of people that want to come here and speak. If there is an individual that's already made the comments that you would have made, and you just want to go ahead and echo their words, please feel free to come up here, state your name, let us know whose words that you agree with, or echo, and it will be placed in the record. That being said,
They need to state their name and address.
and yes, I apologize. Just come up here, please state your name and your address, and we'll move through. We'll start by the door, and we'll move left to the right. How's that? Right to left. I'm sorry.
That's okay. My name is Sarah Ross. I live on Marden Drive in Concord. Do I need to be more specific than
No,
that?
that's
Okay.
good. Great.
One of the things that occurred to me as I was listening to Mr. Galloway speak is the statement that the residents were concerned with the location of the property. And I would like to speak to the benefits of living near an elementary school. We live 4 houses from Buckeye, and I would never change that for anything in the world. The residents that are concerned about traffic, Buckeye is at the end of my street, and maybe for 10 minutes at the beginning of the day or 10 minutes at the end of the day, there's a few more cars, but that has never been an issue. My son and daughter have walked home from school. We've always felt safe and happy with that. For the residents concerned about the noise, maybe for an hour in the middle of the day, we'll hear laughing from kids playing at recess, but that's about all that we hear coming from Buckeye. Very quiet in the middle of the summers especially. But I would like to caution the trustees, I know that you don't have any direct impact on the zoning appeals. However, making statements that the residents are concerned, I think you'll find that the majority of Concord residents are in support of this site. And rather than listening to a few loud no's, perhaps getting a better pool of what the Concord Township residents would like would be a good idea. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. That's the important for your time today, so thank you. Next resident.
My name is Stacy Lulo. I live on Saddlewood here in Concord. And I just want to say that I voted for this levy. My concern is that my kids go to this school. We need a new high school as well. If we do not put this where we said we were going to put this, we are not going to pass another levy again. It's going to affect our teachers, it's going to affect our students, and it's going to affect this community. Our houses will go down, everything, this community is just going to go down. And that is my concern, and I think that I agree with Sarah here that the majority of the residents agree that that's where the school should go, and that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Anybody else?
Second row? Third?
Second row?
I've got other issues, but not regarding the school. Maybe you want to let the school people speak first.
No,
Okay.
you can come up.
Go ahead. Thanks.
Hi there. My name is Chris Buffard. I live on Brookfield Drive. And in addition to being a Concord resident for 13 years, I'm also a Riverside teacher. And so thank you for the compliments you paid to us earlier about our grassroots effort and trying to do everything we can for the kids, the community, everything else. And you spoke about this idea of trying to have this friendship partnership between Riverside Local Schools and the trustees and with Concord Township. But it's curious because in the letter that you sent after the BZA agreement, the third paragraph, it says, it appears the Board of Education believes that the only course of action is to litigate the matter. And the thing is, though, is that you then follow up with saying, we don't believe this is a sound strategy. Then when I watched the video from the October 4th meeting, Mr. Lucas was going into extensive detail about what happens with the BZA, and he actually cited our appeals for our conditional use permit meeting as the example to say, yes, once it's been denied, you then go to the courts. So I'm not sure if then you just completely disagree with Ohio Revised Code, since that's what you cited tonight, saying that's what you have to do. And then from there, where do you go with that? But then the other part of this whole friendship thing I was curious about is that at the end, you add in the potential damage and the credibility of the Board of Education to those suing the township would be similar to the decade of lost credibility that revolved around the purchase of a county home property. That keeps coming up. The thing is, nobody on our Board of Education was involved in the purchase of the county home. That's like saying I'm not going to pay my taxes because I didn't like how Woodrow Wilson handled World War I. It's over. It's time to move forward, and that's the thing that we're asking for, okay? And the last thing before my 3 minutes are up is that as an educator, the biggest thing we talk about is making sure that the kids are getting feedback so that they understand what they've done wrong. But then when you look at the letter that came from the BZA, all it says is did not meet the majority of the standards in section 1305. What does that mean? Where is the itemized things? Because when you look at 1305, it's really vague. If I said to a parent, your kid failed, why? They didn't meet my objective. Then I've lost credibility. If I can't say this is exactly what they need to do and this is how they're going to make it better. So when you said, okay, you have to go to the courts, then you come back and say, no, we'll sit down, and I believe the date was November 8th, is that correct? For the next BZA?
I think that's right.
November 8th, so it's the day after Election Day, correct?
No, that's these.
So when you talk about this sound strategy,
What's the zoning?
Yeah.
for the zoning?
It's a zoning commission. It's a different board.
Okay, but the
BZA met in last week, right? Did the BZA meet last week? Kathy?
Yes, and they will meet on the 8th,
Right.
but it won't be about this issue.
But so that's when this would be then a chance to resolve this?
No. Lucas can speak.
Mike can speak to the process. When I was referring to earlier about the discussion of appealing it within the township, there is no appeals process within the township. Now, the school board can choose not to litigate the decision, and Mike can go into some of the other, options. And that was what our letter was referencing, is that litigation is not the only option, that is, the appeals of a decision is only done through litigation, but you do not need to appeal. So that was the point that I was simply trying to make earlier in my statement. And I'd let Mike, discuss
Okay, because the whole
that
thing
end of things.
with the zoning appeals, though, would then have to be done through the courts, though.
If you wish to appeal a BZA decision, it has to be done through the courts.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you have to actually file the litigation. The school board, and Mike, you can correct me if I misspeak on the legal end of this, the school board can choose to not litigate, as we suggested in the letter, come and sit down with us and try to work through and then reapply with their application, either at another location or even at that location. So it's really a matter of suing, is really a matter of saying, no, we disagree with the decision and we're going to appeal the decision. And what we were saying in our letter is, don't go down the path of lengthy and costly litigation. Let's take a step back and sit down and try to figure out a way to resolve this outside of that litigation. And that may be a matter of reapplying in some way. It may be looking for another site, as I proposed, the possibility of something like a land swap, trying to find a constructive solution. So there's two things here. If you wish to appeal, the only way to do that is through the courts. But if you don't wish to appeal, there are other processes in terms of trying to get a school built, or finding a location, or that sort of thing.
And so how are they going to know what it is that they have to correct in the appeal if the BZA denial just says, just vaguely, did not meet the majority of the standards of section 1305 that are aesthetically pleasing, I think was one of the things. That's subjective. Like, I believe my wife is aesthetically pleasing.
And you should.
Yes, I know. Probably watch.
I don't know her, but I'm just saying, she's your wife.
But,
You should.
so it's always subjective.
But here's what I'm gonna say to you about that. I can't comment on the decision-making process of the BZA, because I have not, prior to the meeting nor after the meeting, spoken to any members of the BZA about their decision-making matrix on why they voted the way they did. To be frank with you, I was as shocked by the decision as anybody. My expectation would have been that the school board would have met the conditions in their application and their presentation and then been granted that. That's what, if you would ask me the morning of that meeting, that's what somebody put, in Vegas, put dollars on the table, that's what I would have said. In fact, I expected that this meeting would be just as contentious, but it would be filled with folks from that neighborhood coming to yell at the trustees instead. So I can't speak to what their decision-making process was, and that will come out in the depositions, and when the lawyers step in to depose the members of the BZA. We aren't privy to it. We weren't part of it. As it relates to saying, what can we do? Our door remains open to sit down with the administration and the school board to say, what is that process, and what could be done? Is there another location that can work? I don't know. Is there something, again, when I talk about my personal concerns about that site, it was revolving around mostly sewers. I mean, obviously from a traffic standpoint, there's things you can do on a road in terms of turn lanes and other things that you can do to calm traffic. But my concern was, as an individual, as a resident, taxpayer, was that they didn't have sewers. A major facility that didn't have a sewer. But I don't know that that's what I don't know what the BZA, I don't know that. And so you're asking me, well, what can we do? And I think that's where I would, it would be beneficial, rather than having litigated, to have sat down with the school board and said, is there a way to make this work? And again, that was the idea of why, spitballing on something like a land swap, trying to find a solution.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time. I think that there's, on my end, my concern was as a teacher, move forward through this as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
All right, with the least cost to the community, everything else. All right. But and, you know, we can get and sit down at the table. Obviously, I'm not invited, but you know.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
No, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
You're a teacher and you're a resident.
Yeah.
You ought to be at the table. I don't have any objection to
I'm an
that.
expensive date.
Well, that's all right.
And I've said this before, we have a Riverside spot every first Wednesday of the month. There's a Riverside spot, you know, just as, you know.
On
the
our
fire-
agenda.
Just as the fire chief comes up and the sheriff's department comes up and gives a report, that Riverside spot has been here for
10 years.
probably 10 years.
Yeah.
So, and it's for anybody, you know, if you're administrator at Riverside, or you're a teacher at Riverside, or you got a kid at Riverside, and you want to, you know, fill that spot and provide us information on first grade, or information on kindergarten, or information on the English program, that's an opportunity for you to talk to the Concord community specifically. So,
right,
thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Jack Whaley. I live in Summerwood. I'm an administrator, but I'm an administrator at Madison. So I just worked very hard, passed a levy for the first time in 30 years there. So I was a part of that, so I know what you guys are going through. It's backbreaking work, and you guys did it, which I was so proud. But in my position, I have to do a lot of things where parents are upset, community members are upset, my boss sometimes gets upset, but if what I do when I go home at night is in the best interest of the kids, then I can sleep at night. And I think sometimes you guys in your position, sometimes politically or whatever position that you have to base your decisions on, sometimes you don't put those things first. And I do, and I think a lot of our teachers do, and I think that sometimes needs to be stand out a little more than the political end of things. So one thing I heard on my way in, which I don't know if it's true, but 2 members of that zoning committee are members of people who live in Summerwood. So I could see why they might not want a school being built by where they live. That's what I don't know if it's true, but
That's
I'm
not
just
true.
throwing that out there. Okay, yeah, like I said.
That is not true.
Okay. But my neighbors here, between myself, my neighbor in the next house, we have 11 kids that go to the schools here. And it's building that school there, to me, you know, as a teacher a long time, now I'm an administrator, you know, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, kids in school, there was, out of a classroom, 1 out of 30 kids were obese, out of shape. Now it's 1 out of 5, 1 in every row. So having a school like that in proximity to a neighborhood like that, I mean, our kids get yelled at for riding their bike on the street. We don't have sidewalks. They gotta ride their bike on the street. There's nowhere else for them to go in Summerwood. So having an area like that with all these kids that are coming up, and our development's not even filled yet, that's a place where you get those kids in that development to go to that school. And my kids went to St. Gabe's first, and now they're at Leroy. So I can say, I don't want to offend anybody, but the kids that go to school in that neighborhood, that go to the elementary school that's public, they're more likely to go to a public high school, which is Riverside, which that school will be the heartbeat of the schools down the road. So, I mean, that's me talking from a, you know, we have kids that are open enrolled at Madison that live in Concord. That's crazy to me, you know? Those kids should be going to school here where they live. So that's all I want to say.
Well, thank you.
Hey, Jack, I did just want to again, want to reiterate one comment you made when you talked about our decision-making. Again, we didn't make that decision.
Yeah, when I say it, I wasn't talking about you, I'm talking more about the board zoning guys that voted, not you. So they're not here to talk to you, right?
And you know, the BZA members are not here. And there are no members on the BZA that live in Summerwood, is that right?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, I don't know that was true. That's just what I heard on my way in.
Just the zoning commission. member.
No.
Yeah, zoning.
There are 2 members of the zoning commission that live in Summerwood, but they did not rule on this matter either.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Come on, Chris.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Chris Boular from Summerwood. And by the way, thank you for bringing the Summerwood perspective. One thing I would say is that I don't know. I I don't know what the perspective of all of Concord is, and if they do agree with this school, I would think it's partially because the vast majority of Concord is not affected by the location of this school. And that's understandable, but I would ask the rest of my fellow citizens to consider living on this street and the effects of more traffic on the street at the time when the traffic will be there. So I agree that it's not going to be all times a day. It's going to be 2 certain times a day where you'll have lots of traffic, but those are also the same times when people are leaving to go to places like work. Summerwood, the street that goes through Summerwood is an obvious cut-through street. So, and to get into Summerwood, you have the entrance at the bottom of a very steep hill. So one of my concerns would be the traffic coming down that hill, whether it be buses, whether it be rushed parents, whatnot, having to slam on their brakes to make that turn, to get into Summerwood, to make their cut through over to 608. And then, of course, I don't think the comparison between the Summerwood situation and the Buckeye is completely the same thing, only because it is a cut-through street, and I just don't see in my mind kids walking to a school that is on 608. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have. It is not necessarily a safe place to walk at a busy time. So those are my concerns. I voted for the levy. I want there to be a school, but I would like to see the process go through, through to its end, for us to really look at what are the other alternatives. If this is really the only place we can put it, then we just put it there. But I just want them to make doubly sure that that's the case. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Marcy Feather. I live on Oakhurst, and I am a realtor in the community. I've lived here for 15 years. I also have kids in the school and just love Concord and everything that's been going, and I'm so excited that schools are on the docket, that people pass the levies. There were so many failed levies when I lived here, and when you have friends and family that live in other neighborhoods, they comment on why do you let your kids go to school there and things like that. So I'm very excited for that to end. So thank you for your hard work, the school board and you. I guess the thing that I still am having a hard time with is that the decision from the Board of from the BZA, I know that that's not something that you can speculate on. I guess it might be traffic, might be waste management, whatever it might be. Traffic can be controlled by ODOT, waste management is controlled by the EPA. I mean, they're not going to put a system in there that's going to be a nuisance. It's not okay. So to me, those don't seem like issues that the BZA would unanimously reject or deny something for. And I guess I just want to know what lies on them to educate the district for the next piece of, if it isn't this piece of land and it is another piece of land, they need to learn from what's going on and just providing a 10-word statement of this failed is like a slap in the face to everyone who voted for the levy and everyone who's put in so much work into that particular property. Where does that responsibility lie? It's not you because you don't know the answer, but do they have to do anything, or that has to come out in litigation?
Mike, if he chooses to speak to it, I don't believe they have any obligation to give a lengthy answer in terms of the denial. I mean, they can cite whatever it is they choose to cite as to why.
Let me answer that. That's a good question. They don't have an obligation to detail point by point by point why they're approving or denying a conditional use permit application. Generally, if there's a party that disagrees with it, it's appealed to the court, and then evidence is presented. They have to prepare then, when there's an appeal, they have to prepare findings of fact and conclusions of law under the state statute. And that's when they articulate the evidence that was presented as a statement of fact, paragraph by paragraph, and then the conclusions of law as to why they ruled the way they did, whether they granted it or denied it. So the state statute provides, to answer your question, that at the time they make the decision, they don't have to enumerate all that, although it might be frustrating, I recognize that. The state statute provides if somebody appeals to the court, you've got 40 days under Ohio Revised Code 25, I think it's 2503. No, it's not, it's 25, I'm sorry, it's 250603, to file those findings of fact and conclusions of law. And then you have an existing full decision for the court to consider. So most of the time, most boards of zoning appeals, and we represent, several communities in the Northeast Ohio area. Most boards, and I've experienced in presenting cases to boards of zoning appeals, most of the time they simply deny or affirm the application.
Okay, so they denied the application. So the district has the opportunity, it's certain that the district has the opportunity to come forward and resubmit an application again? Or is that just something that was said as a helpful, possible compromise?
Well, I think some of that, to be honest with you, David Riley's your attorney, and he's an excellent attorney. That's an option that properly should be discussed with him, to be honest with you. And I'm not trying to be evasive, but
no, I
feel uncomfortable saying.
Most attorneys don't want you to put all your eggs on the table or lay everything out there, because
well, that's
then that
true.
opens you up for, things, I guess. I don't know.
Well, again, it would not be my place to provide that, except to acknowledge that you have an excellent attorney. And certainly he would be, I'm sure, quite willing to talk about it with you as he's the attorney for your district.
And I would point out, have you watched the meeting on TV or on the?
I watched part of it.
Part of it. I know some people have asked, well, why didn't the legal counsel at the meeting advise our team that was here presenting at the, what to do? And that is not the role of the legal counsel that's here. The legal counsel is here during a meeting for any applicant is to advise the board of legal questions that the board has. They represent the board in terms of in any legal thing that may come up during a meeting. Any applicant, it is a applicant's obligation to have their own legal counsel. I'm not sure why, but it was not, the Riverside did not bring legal counsel with them to that meeting. And so I just wanted, that's been asked a bunch of us, under rules, that's not the role of counsel. They are to advise the board that's sitting, not applicants in front of them. So I just want to make that little clarification.
You said you can't give preferential treatment just because the BZA can't give special treatment. If somebody was going to put a shed on their property, would they just also get denied and then be able to resubmit, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
they
Okay.
would. They would. And listen, to support Mike's comments here, I'm an attorney. I've done these. I've represented townships before. I've done BZA appeals. And as an attorney, I feel uncomfortable having the discussions that we've already had about that. As a trustee, as a member of the community, as a supporter of Riverside Schools, and appreciating all the work that has went into their efforts, we're having these discussions. Even though it would be against my, legal background. And
I can tell you, I can feel the lasers from Mike when I talk, because I'm sure as the attorney, he's not happy with me talking at all.
Anybody talking
I'm
at
sure
all.
he would like to take his sock off and put it in my mouth and say, shut
Some
up.
way to put 'em all in the
We're in
side.
litigation, but, we could step up here and say, we can't talk about anything, but we don't want to do that, because honestly, we're all in the same boat together, and we're a family on this thing, and so that's why we're talking, and having to be somewhat reserved about what we can talk about, but, that's why we're kind of going through this process.
I met with teachers and residents recently, and then I confessed to Mike, here's what I did. You know, I know what I wasn't supposed to be doing, but I did. And I really did that, as Chris has mentioned, because a resolution is important to us. Some harmony in the community is important to us. But the overall mission of both.
I'm sure, yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
I'm Jim Kalis, Superintendent of Riverside Local Schools. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I think I have to clarify a few things. First of all, this is not a spitball issue. This is a $38.5 million bond that was denied by the BZA by using just 10 words that we didn't meet the majority of 1305. We're not even arguing the 1305. We believe that we met all the requirements both in 1305 and also 1310. But going back to a previous statement about not saying that this location, or the trustees would never say that this location was inappropriate. In the letter that you sent out to us on September 25th, you specifically say that. So again, that's the double talk that we need to clarify. When we were denied the conditional use permit, we did contact, our lawyer did contact you, Mr. Lucas, and ask you if there was any type of appeal process that we can reapply, change some things. The answer was no.
He didn't ask me that.
Okay, that's my understanding.
Well, you're wrong about that.
Okay, my question though is then, is there an appeal process where we can tweak something and resubmit to you without the BZA rescinding that?
You should talk to your excellent lawyer, David Riley, on that point,
Okay.
because he's your lawyer.
The other thing I wanted to mention as well is there's many emails that are out there that will support a lot of our stance on this position. It is outlined in Riverside Local Schools website. I would suggest that if you want to see actual documentation backing up the statements that are made by our district, to go to that website. Thank you.
I'm going to choose not to respond to that.
I'm Matt Ozinga. Paul?
Yeah,
Nice
Matt.
to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Matt Ozinga, I'm a Painesville Township resident. I live on Dorchester Drive, 31 Dorchester Drive. I am we talk about family a lot, and it's dysfunctional. I mean, but it's a family. And I'm a graduate, I'm a lifelong resident, my family lives in the township, my kids go to the schools, my wife and I are committed to being in the schools, and we've gone from a time when, by anyone's estimation, it would be nice to say that things between the different parties in the school district were contentious, if you will, teachers, families, administration. And I think it's kind of now like the movie Finding Nemo, where we got all the tuna fish swimming in the same direction to the bottom to save the other guy. And that's a good thing. And if you don't know the analogy, go watch the movie, you know. But
we did it.
You know, so I guess when we throw around what feels to be very cavalierly the idea of family, and I just want to point out that, you know, we're pulling in a good direction here. You know, we're one step away from getting the school district and the communities together to where it needs to be. And I feel the need to point out at this point now that this is your decision at this point. The suit that's been brought forward has not been against the Board of Zoning Appeals, has not been against the zoning board proper, but it's been against the trustees.
No, it's against the Board of Zoning Appeals.
But
you,
the trustees have the ability, you do have the ability to make a decision. You absolutely do. Now, that's that is your discretion to do that, and I'm not a legal mind here. I just speak for teachers and families and, our school district. But I think we need to be very, very careful about this idea of family. When, Tom Hack, for example, is in the room back here. I don't know Tom at all. I mean, Tom's on the Board of Education. He's technically my boss. But, I've read exchanges on the internet. I didn't bring it here to wave in anybody's face. This is just my own notes. Where members of this board have directly been attacking him personally. That's not how family operates. And I want to be very, very clear that I think we do got a family going. I think it's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to be part of that. I think we have that going on. I'm proud of that. So, again, yes, there's a lot of moving pieces here. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of emotional information being put out on social media. I'm not even on Facebook for that reason. People screenshot stuff to me. I don't want to see any of it. But I think there is the opportunity to step back. There is the opportunity to avoid. And I would implore you to indeed do that. I know you have legal counsel sitting right here. I know that the district has legal counsel as well. We can do that dance. But ultimately, that's not taking a step back. If there are parties that want to get involved, then they should get involved. If you want to meet with the board, you should meet with the board, if that is indeed your message. So I'm just saying, look, this whole thing is going to destroy our community. It will have that effect. And people need to consider what they're saying and who they're saying it to and what they are saying about especially people. All right? That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. And I just make the comment that simply, as you know, I reached out to you, Matt.
Yeah.
And that was for no other purpose than to start that type of dialogue. So.
Paul, I appreciate that publicly. Thank you for calling. I'm not an actor here, though. I don't have a decision. I don't have I don't have any capital to spend here. I can't make a decision.
I understand.
But thank you.
All right, Carrie Mateka. I live on Deer Haven Drive in Concord, right behind Lamuth. I'm used to speaking to 5th graders, so I have a little something to lead me through this. But I'm speaking as a Concord resident, a Leroy teacher, and a mother of 3 Riverside students. Schools are a cornerstone of communities. They bring people together, neighborhoods together. They attract new families to our communities. We finally have the chance to have a state-of-the-art school that will serve Concord children. Currently, right now, Leroy has 32 families attending our school from the Summerwood area. I would say that many of the Summerwood residents have reached out to us saying that they do support the school being built at that property that's been purchased. The district has done a lot of studying on different properties around Concord, some very thoroughly, some were turned down right away. This seems to be the perfect spot, seeing as though so many children live in this area of Concord. And it is also close to Leroy. It's about, I think, under 3 miles. I would urge the opponents to this that live near the site to see the positives of being by a school. We living by Lamuth, we have not had really any problems. We've lived there for 14 years. We don't have any smell issues, light issues, traffic issues. So I really can't see how that's going to be much of a problem. Communities are ever changing, and we see that right now as everything's being built around Concord, and that should be embraced. So I guess in all,
if you could work with Riverside to build an amazing school on that property, that is what we would like to see happen.
Thank you.
My name is Bikram Chakraborty. I live in Summerwood. I just wanted to say that I am in favor of the school being built at that proposed site. My wife and I have built 2 houses in Summerwood. We love that neighborhood. When we found out the school was going to come in right at the end of the neighborhood, we were very excited. One thing I can say after watching that video of the BZA meeting, I was just shocked at how quickly that decision was made. It basically seemed to me like the 4 people that were up there, 2 of which were alternates, were bullied into making that decision.
Can you expand on that?
Basically, I don't think there was enough support for people that were for the school being built there. I wish I would have known that that was happening that night, because I would have been there. Chris, I've been talking to you a little bit via Facebook. I don't know if you, my name's pretty unique, so you probably know the name. But you made the comment that you are obligated to back the BZA's decision, and I disagree with that. You're obligated to back the residents who overwhelmingly voted for this levy, and of those, and I counted the number of people that voted for the levy in Concord. 4,000 people voted for this levy, and for the most part, all those people have no issue with the school being built there. So again, I just urge you guys to, settle this matter out of court and get that school built there.
Yeah, I just, one question. And when the levy was up, though, we were just voting for new schools, as I understood it to be, not necessarily where they're going to be, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't think there's a disagreement. Concord Township, majority of people, they voted want a new school. And I want to make sure that we're all clear, or maybe I'm not clear, so make sure that we're, we are on the same page, is that everyone wanted a new school, when we voted for it, we just didn't know where the location was going to be,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But at the same time, of the 4,000 people that voted for it, I think it's a very select few people at this point. And I know, one of my neighbors came up here today and said he voted for the levy, but he doesn't want the school built. I think it's a select few of those 4,000 people that that don't want that school built there. I think of those 4,000 people, most people want the school built there.
Okay. Well,
mainly because it's going to get the school built on time. My kids go to Leroy, or one of my kids go to Leroy, it's crumbling. We need a school, we need it now. Delaying this is going to be a huge problem. And it's also going to be financially an issue with the schools, because they're saying it's going to cost, an extra $1 million if they don't build the schools at the same time. So in my eyes, them actually, there's a lot of people saying that the school district's wasting money now with this litigation. But in my eyes, they're actually doing the financially responsible thing, because if they get this school built there, they could potentially save a lot of money on the construction costs.
no, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
My name is Tom Manzak. I represent myself and my wife, Brandy Manzak. We live on Cora, which is part of the Summerwood development. I just want to say that we clearly are in favor, being in the Summerwood area, the site that was denied. It was near where we live, and like our neighbor Jack here said, we have tons of kids in the street that play. We would love to have a school near us where those kids could have to take advantage of that. It's something that we really think is necessary. And one of my biggest issues here is that school is supposed to be open, I think, fall of 2019. Now, what type of schedule? No one here is going to be able to answer that. Or is that going to be washed away, or where do we stand on that? Does anyone have any idea?
I don't know.
Because I have young kids. I got 2 more young kids that are starting school yet. I was hoping that they could use a new facility. And I'll tell you what, I've been in the Leroy facility, and it's The teachers are awesome, the administrators are awesome there. The building itself is dilapidated. Have any of you guys walked through that school lately?
Yes.
Have you seen the condition of the school?
Yes.
And if we're supposed to be a premier community, I think we need to have this taken care of. We need resolution as soon as possible.
Well, and I would reiterate that we don't disagree with any of that, that the school, we need new schools, and 100%. I've supported the bond levy, voted for it, 100%, so.
Well, I understand that, but at the end of the day, I think everyone in here wants this school built, and we want a new, I mean, Leroy's not acceptable. It is a building, not the administration, but we need something now.
Thank you.
There's two people who want to speak.
All right, Chief, you want to cycle some people out of here, make a little move?
Do you want to do a pause?
Yeah.
I only have 2 people, so.
Okay. All right, Mr. Massey, you want to come up? Well, you have Ms. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kelly Fiffick. I live currently on Stonewick Drive, which is located in the Ellison Creek subdivision. I am a stay-at-home mom of 3 small boys that do go to Melridge Elementary. And just sitting in the firehouse over there, my blood is boiling, and I'm one of those people that, trying not to get too angry. But I feel a lot of arrogance up here, which is just making my blood boil. I feel like you truly don't have our students their best interests at heart. I'm just curious if you guys have children, do they go to Riverside schools? Just curious.
I have one daughter, she went to Riverside.
Both my kids go to parochial schools. My wife's in the public education.
Shocking. That's all I needed.
Well,
that's all I needed to know. That's all I needed to know.
Taught mock trial at Riverside schools. I've on the board as.
That's all I wanted
Sure.
to know. And then for the issue of the man in Summerwood, again, I live in Ellison Creek, and Lamouth Middle School surrounds our development. It's a big horseshoe. It's we get a lot of, cut through traffic, if you say, nothing crazy. But if anybody's ever been on Stonewick Drive, there's a very large hill. But I'm going to say that there's never been any issues of busing issues, traffic. Auburn Road is very hectic.
Ma'am.
It is very hectic. It's a 40 mile an hour road. We're the 3rd house down from Auburn Road. It can be very fast, sir. Lamouth is also on septic. I've never in my life smelled any kind of sewer, anything like that. My son plays football as well as baseball. We've been to the fields. We're there all fall, all spring and summer. We've never had an issue. And I know that I have a lot of high school friends here, that we all grew up in Menor High. And we came to Concord because we love this area. And at the time when I moved into Ellison Creek, which was in 2008, my husband and I just built our 2nd home, and the schools were fantastic. As we moved in, levies weren't passing, and I can honestly say we had thought about moving to Kirtland, somewhere else. We hung on, and then when the levies passed this past fall, we were ecstatic. My children, both my boys, love Melridge. They don't want to leave, and we're gonna stay here. But people like you make me so angry. Do you have children?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm just saying, I don't think you guys have the best interest. We're sitting over there watching this, and all of our bloods are boiling.
Okay,
Well, ma'am, just as a point of procedure, you're supposed to address the chair. You don't interact with the audience. If you think that's arrogant to say that, then fine.
And there's no issues with what he is saying. There is none. There's no sewage smell. You hear children laughing, having a great time playing sports, football. It's a great community feel. And this upsets me that this kind of stuff is being said, that that's going to happen over to Summerwood, and it's definitely not. Auburn Road is the same situation. It's a busy street. And what makes me mad is people like this are interfering with our kids, and property values everything. It's absurd.
Okay, listen, and again, I don't want to upset you. The reason
I'm
why.
already upset, so that's.
Okay, the reason why we have you just address us, and the reason why we have a court reporter here, is because, in all likelihood, this is going to be transcribed, and the Riverside attorney is going to get those transcripts, and the purpose of your comments is helpful to us, and the dispute that's before us, and to take that into consideration. And so that's why we don't need to have, comments from you to them and them to you, because we want to make sure it's transcribed properly so that we can get a good record. And we're taped, but mostly, more likely than not, they're going to read the transcripts instead of watching the tapes, because that's what lawyers generally do. So I apologize if your blood is boiling. Is there anything additional that you want to add?
No, I do not. I think that's enough said. I think you guys have made the arrogance pretty well known, especially over in that room, so that's all I need to say.
Hi, my name is Lisa Siciliano Miller. I am from Leroy. I live in Milton Drive. I have three boys in the school district, one in the elementary, one in the middle school, one in the high school. I am a professional in the community, and I believe our youth, our children are our biggest asset in the community. I think our school district, the parents did a great deal of work to try to put our investment in our children by passing the levy, and they did that. I guess what I'm a little taken back by is just kind of the lax attitude. I mean, there was a lot of time put into getting the levy passed, securing this property. I would be willing to bet that the school board did what they needed to do, or at least everything they were aware of to secure this location, whatever they needed to do. And I guess it's what I'm taken back is that somebody could just take that ability for us to build the school without really any reason. When the BZA can come in and just say you can't do it with not any clear understanding of what we've done wrong. As a board, I would think you would be concerned about anybody wanting to buy property in Concord. I mean, if I'm a homeowner and I'm thinking I'm getting ready to build, and then all of a sudden somebody can go do that, it's a huge injustice to our community, to our district, and I'm wondering what the board stance is on what you are going to do to make sure, what is the process, and so this doesn't happen again, number one, and number two, what is your stance on what has occurred to our community and our district? It just seems like you're very non-committal. I think the majority of the community wants this district, wants the school to have this, wants the district to have this school built. So what is your position, and what are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? I'd really like for each one of you to answer that. It just seems like there's been no commitment, and I don't know if it's because it's election coming up.
I'll be more than happy to explain it to you.
Okay.
And we're going to, my deposition is probably going to be taken on the matter. But when there's a decision that we're going to spend $38.5 million on schools, which I think is a significant decision by the board to make that decision, significant decision by the teachers to support that decision, a significant decision by in not just Concord Township, but Painesville Township, Leroy Township to pass that levy. And then when there's a site selection and the consideration of whether or not that school is going to be allowed, you generally purchase that property or about to purchase that property with the conditional use permit already in hand, so that you know that you're not making a mistake, that you already know that you can build the school there. And as a lawyer, as somebody who's been through the BZA, and is that you would buy that property with a contingent that you're allowed to build it already, right? You already got a conditional use permit in hand, or that you move forward to the Board of Zoning Appeals with the owner of that property, contingent with you, saying, yes, we'd like to build a school here, do we have the approval of the Board of Zoning Appeals? And that did not happen here.
Were they aware that they had to do that? I mean,
well, I mean, I don't know if Riverside was aware they had to do that, but
I mean, is that common knowledge?
It's common knowledge to me as a lawyer. It's common knowledge to.
Well, as a lawyer, but not every homeowner is a lawyer.
Well, yeah, not every homeowner. But then again, if you were going to build a home there, you would already know that it's zoned to build a home there, and you already know you can put a home there. If you need to get a conditional use permit, you would have to. It would say that this may be permitted if these conditions are met and it's approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so there's that step, okay? And I apologize if it appears to be arrogance, but it was not. I know, but it was, it is concern. And it's that, well, I have litigation here that I have to be concerned about because someone says, well, what your township did was wrong, and I don't necessarily know that to be true yet. I didn't hear the evidence, I didn't see the evidence. But then generally what would happen is that when you have a conditional use hearing for the Board of Zoning Appeal, I would tend to think it would be about a 4-hour hearing, if not longer than that. And you would be going through all the factors of 1305 and 1310, and you'd bringing experts in. And I reviewed the transcripts. I don't know if they met all those conditions or not.
The school district. The school district, is that what you're
The
saying?
school district. And my guess is that during the litigation or during the settlement discussions, those items are going to be talked about in a significant fashion. Now, as I'm saying these things to you, I'm sure our legal counsel over here is not necessarily happy with my comments. But you know, it's important for me to let you know that, okay? And I think it's important because what went wrong here, I don't know what went wrong here. That's part of what I have to figure out, right? That's what our job is. And if we're gonna have to do the work of the Board of Zoning Appeals or whoever else it is during this litigation, we're gonna have to have answers to all those questions. Whether we make that as a decision of how to resolve the matter, or whether the judge makes that in a decision of how to resolve that matter.
Right, and just one last thing, I guess it's just mind-boggling that this board wouldn't have been aware of this stuff and been communicating to the school. I mean, this was a huge purchase.
December 23rd of 2016.
Telling them they needed to go through the BZA.
This person said that. This person said that you had to get a conditional use permit and do not purchase that property until you have that. If you need to get an extension, get an extension. If you need to get an option, get an option. But I could tell you that those words were uttered out of my mouth. Okay. Okay.
Hello, my name is Tom Hack, and I live on Fay Road in Concord. I'm also on the Riverside School Board, and I would like to, I guess, counteract what was just stated. We have an email that was sent from Mr. Kalis on February 15th of this year, which is before we actually closed the deal on the Stearns property. And here's what it says. This is the last paragraph. We are cognizant for the need to apply for site plan review. However, we do not officially own the property, yet nor do we have all the information, details that are required for the application. We'd like to yield to your discretion, as we do not want to be in a position to purchase the property only to find out later that we cannot get approval by Concord Township. Our architects, Fanning and Howey, can provide some of the details for the site application, but at this time it would be incomplete. I can also send the township copies of all the testing results if necessary. In essence, I'm asking that what we can do now to help this process along. Thank you for your time. I apologize for the poor reading. I'm trying to read it off my phone. But clearly, we did ask, before we closed on the property, we asked what was going to be needed in order for us to move forward with the construction. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kalis, we did not hear back from them? Is that
We don't have a dialogue between the members of the audience, Mr. Hack. As was said earlier, you direct it to the chair.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt, I apologize.
To my understanding, we were looking for guidance on how to move forward. This is before we closed on the Stearns property, and we did not receive that feedback. So I would ask for some clarification, please.
Right. So, and again, I'm aware of the February 16th return email that and I thought it was referenced in Mr. Kalis's response to the board, that not only talked about 1310, but then attached the entire section of 13, which includes the 1301, the conditional use definition, the conditional use permit definition in 1302, the 1303, the purpose, 1304, the contents of the application for a conditional use permit, 1305, the general standards applicable to all conditional uses, and then went on to then also go on to say 1310 of the school.
Yeah, so if I could, the actual issue is whether or not we are able to apply not having owned the land. It's our understanding from conversations with the township that we could not move forward with the conditional use until we actually own the property, and you stated something that was contradictory to that.
I just know what I said on December 23rd. You were here at a meeting on December 23rd of 2016. A phone call came into either town hall or someone's cell phone, and discussions took place with regards to Mr. Kalis, and I know what I said. I don't know what was heard or understood on the other end, but I know what I said. I know that it's pretty common that when you're looking for a conditional use permit and you're purchasing property and you want it for a specific purpose, i.e. the reason why you want to file for a conditional use permit, that it's done as a contingency of that purchase or in conjunction with the existing owner. In my world, that is done a lot. And I'm not saying that that's done a lot in your world. I'm just, that's pretty well understood in my world. But I can tell you that at least I know I uttered those words to him.
I won't come back up. It's
No.
not true.
No, we're not going to have a litigation here.
Well, you're saying things that are not true.
Well,
Jim, I was part of that phone conversation. It is accurate, but we're not going to litigate.
All right, enough. You say it's not true, they say it's true, all right? We satisfied?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, thanks for making that extraneous comment by the back of the room. Move on to whoever you want to call next.
Mr. Massey?
Good evening. I'm Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive in Concord. I have sort of made it a mission for the last year to try to understand local financing, and I think Amy and probably Kathy would also agree, not only been a mission, but it's sort of been an obsession with me, and I appreciate all their help. I do have a public service announcement. I attend a lot of meetings, and I attended a meeting on Tuesday. It was at the commissioners meeting. Edward Zupancic, who is the auditor for Lake County, was there at the meeting and gave a speech about how real estate taxes are going to be impacted drastically because of the decline in valuation of the public utilities. There's going to be a $5,647,000 decrease. I don't see anything that impacts Riverside schools, but peri-local schools, they're going to lose $2,285,000. Eastlake is going to lose $200,000. Willoughby Eastlake is about $1.5 million. A lot of the general fund for the Lake County, general fund, the Adams Board, narcotics, children's services, they're all going to be hit. My concern is that we're going to start to see some levies that are going to be on the May ballots, and you know how I feel about the increasing levies. Another item is again, my desire to understand the local financing. Came across an entry on the revenue statement that said $337,000 for TIF. As I understand it, that's a tax increment financing. And I had to do some investigation. What does that really mean? And as I understand it, that if there is a parcel of land that is vacant land, that produces X number of dollars of real estate taxes. If a developer puts a building on that, that value of that property increases, and it therefore increases the real estate taxes. The TIF is a state-regulated, it's a resolution, I mean, there's nothing illegal, but what happens, as I understand, the trustees can request the formation of a TIF, and the increase in the valuation, the tax impact that should be going to the schools, in this case Riverside and/or Auburn, is somehow taken away from the schools and is put in this TIF. And that money is used for road development and sewers, as it did with Crowell Road. Am I correct in that? Have I said that correctly?
Yes, a TIF allows a local entity, municipality or township, and there are different types of TIFs that go in different lengths of time, that allows a municipality to capture the increased amount in terms of valuation of that, on that property because of the development that you mentioned, and then apply those dollars towards infrastructure spending in terms of building a road, refixing a road, extending sewers, things of that nature, yes.
I think, that's what I thought it was, but I just have to say, it again, it's my opinion. There's nothing illegal about it. I don't mean to imply, nor should you assume that I'm saying something that's illegal, but as a taxpayer, when I vote for something, I expect it to go to that, whether it's for schools or the roads, I expect it to go there. And it's almost like a legal, deception here, that the money was taken away from the schools and was pumped into roads. And so I'll just make that comment. I also have, I've been speaking about the senior levy. I spoke to Joel Tomsick, who is in charge of the Council on Aging. I received from the Commissioner's office the statement that shows all of the revenue that is handed out to all the senior centers. And again, I notice Concord Township is not on that. And I asked, do we get any, does anything come back to the Concord residents? Mr. Tomsick said, well, yes, I think there are some people that are on Meals on Wheels, and I have asked him I'd like to know how many people are benefiting from the senior levy. If they're asking for us to support a senior levy, I'd like to know at least somebody in our township is benefiting from that. Now, I understand that our community center, it was determined that we didn't want to make it a senior levy because there are some federal regulations that say that you must serve meals in order to make it a senior. But if we have all of these people in Concord Township that are on Meals on Wheels, as Mr. Tomsick indicates, maybe we should start looking at, if we want to help those seniors that are in our township, change it from a community center to a senior center and start feeding the people if there is a food deficit.
I don't know what the number is on Meals on Wheels. My understanding from the past is that it's, for Concord Township, it's not very high.
Well, I have not been given that number from Mr. Tomsick. When I get it, I will share it with people, because again, we want to be lobbyists for citizens. We can't just continue to spend the money without it coming back.
And to not have the community center be a senior center, you are correct in that the cost requirements, the previous determination was the amount of dollars that we would get back from things like the senior levy or otherwise would not in any way balance out the additional costs to the needs of that facility, the things that would be required of the township to pay for. Then you're getting into programs and things in terms of that revolve around having an actual senior center, which is a federal designation, and then therefore all the things that have to be done. Our determination in the past is that the cost of the township would far outweigh what we would receive in dollars from anything else, would therefore be pulling that out of the general fund and other levy dollars. So
I recognize that, but I just want to let you know that we are looking into that. You had mentioned several meetings ago that we are a donor community. All right? So when I see the senior levy, we're not getting anything from that. I look at the local government funds, where we're 17th out of 26. there's not much money coming back to us. So we're spending a lot of money. I've got other items, but it would probably take up too much time, and maybe there's more people talking, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brian.
Hello, my name is Nick Carabine. I work for the district, and I'm also a resident in the Riverside Local School District, and I have 2 children who will hopefully be attending these new schools in the near future. A couple minutes ago, Mr. Hack came up and discussed an email that Mr. Kalis had sent to Heather Freeman, the Planning and Zoning Director, on February 15th, and he didn't have the response on them, but I do. And her response, again, this is the Planning and Zoning Director, was, Mr. Kalis, thank you for your emails. I look forward to working with you and your team on this project. It sounds like you have started a lot of the preliminary work on this, which is great. I am more than happy to schedule a pre-application conference with your team, including, but not limited to, your engineer and architects to review the site plan review process and zoning requirements for locating your school in Concord Township. I can invite representatives from the other township, county, and state departments that may be involved in this project as well. I have attached to this email zoning regulations pertaining to site plan review and conditional use permit requirements, section 13.10. A school requires a conditional use permit to be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Also attached to this email are filing deadlines for both applications. Nowhere in that email did it say anything about section 13.05 or anything else about section 13. As far as I know, there was a pre-application meeting. I wasn't there, but it was April 3rd, and a lot of things were discussed, and at that moment there was no opposition or any situations that would cause any controversy with a zoning application. And then there's 2 other things I wanted to say. Mr. Galloway, you stated in your letter to Riverside and that you sent to the News Herald that the trustees advised the district not to purchase this land before we purchased it. But you also said earlier in this meeting that you didn't even know we were going to purchase it until you saw us announce it.
That's correct. I'll explain that.
And then another thing I thought was a little disturbing, because you guys talk about wanting to be partners with the district and want to be a friend, and you want to come back to the table and work together again to kind of resolve this issue. You also made a statement earlier today that you haven't, prior or post the Board of Zoning Appeals decision, contacted them to ask them what happened. And that was over a month ago. And I think it's kind of weird that a township trustee who says that they're willing to work with the district didn't even bother to contact the Board of Zoning Appeals to see, hey, what happened? Why didn't this go through? What can the school do to work this out? And you talk about going to the table to talk about other land swaps or other locations in the district. But if you didn't talk to the zoning appeals, and we don't know why we were denied, because it was very vague, and you don't know why because it was just as vague, and you said you didn't have any conversations with them. So how can we work together when no one really knows why this was denied in the first place?
Let me respond to it just really quick. There was as you mentioned, there was a pre-conference meeting with a number of county and township officials where they walked through various elements of what would be required as part of the process. And let me be clear that when staff engages those types of meetings with applicants, they don't do so from a pro or con or as an advocate or an adversary type position. It's done as a neutral, that here are the things that you will need to do as an applicant to be able to satisfy the conditions within the code and the things that you'll have to prepare to bring in before the BZA to make your case for the conditional use permit. That meeting took place. In addition, I have an email from, let me see if I can find the actual date. Even then, after that, on June 28th, from Mrs. Freeman to your landscape architects, answering a bunch of questions, attaching the conditional use sections that they would need to prepare in the application. She specifically says the conditional use permit requirements are found in Section 13 of the zoning resolution. It must meet the conditions of Section 1305 and Section 1310. Below is the link to the application, which includes information on what must be submitted along with it and the requirements, and here's the filing fee. And then she provides all those attachments and all those links. So I believe that staff was very clear in terms of what are the elements that need to be addressed as it relates to the conditional use permit application. When you inquire about the land acquisition, December 7th was when Riverside announced the location of the school on their social media, announcing it on.
Voted to purchase it. We didn't apply. That was just.
I understand. Let me. So on December 7th, it was announced that this is where our school is going to be. This is where we've chosen a site on Route 608. That was on December 7th. That social media post was the first time I learned that the district had chosen a site. Now, subsequently, I learned that, yes, they did not purchase it. They had entered into an option with the property owner for the purposes of purchasing it. And then, as Mr. Malcheski had referenced, on December 23rd, there was a call placed to us inquiring with us regarding the situation on that option and whether or not they should purchase the property. And we advised them at that time that based on the length of time that it would take to put the materials needed together for the conditional use permit application and everything that goes into that, all the studies and all the analysis, that they should extend that option, not purchase the property, but extend that option until that conditional use permit process in front of the BZA was completed. That was the advice given on that phone call. And so, yes, then they subsequently then, at a later date, closed on the sale of the property prior to the acquisition of the property. So, again, the township does not have a role in that process. And as far as talking to the BZA after the decision, being that the BZA is an autonomous board and makes their own independent decisions without interference from the trustees, I don't feel that it would be proper to get on the phone and call them right after and say, what did you do, why did you do, how did this, what was your decision, knowing that the likely appeal process, if there was going to be an appeal, would be litigation. Now, I'm not an attorney, but we have never interfered with the actions of the BZA before or after a decision, and I believe that that's the proper thing to do. Now, that doesn't mean that, somehow we don't care or we don't, have an interest in a school being built in the community. We do, we absolutely do, and we have voiced that repeatedly.
I mean, listen, we have to follow the law and ethics, and it just would be improper. Not only do I think that, but I'm positive that the judge that has this case would find that to be improper to have that discussion with the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's just not something that you can do. So.
Hi. Lisa Locanti, 8140 Mount Royal Drive. First of all, I can't believe the structure of the meeting, again, because for those of us who haven't been here as long as I've been coming to these meetings since May, and I feel like I'll probably get cut off, but I have a Chrisometer, and you, Mr. Galloway, have been talking for 35 minutes, and then you give us 3 minutes to talk. 5-minute answers. It doesn't just seem fair. So I feel like there's no chance for really important people that are here today to follow up for the main reason on the docket. They just get shut down, and you know, Mr. Lucas all of a sudden is the meeting police. But by the time you answer, it's completely out of context. As far as the BZA being autonomous, you know, I would love an elementary school in my backyard. I live in the Mount Royal development, and one of the most joyous times of my day is when I get to go pick up my kids at school and hear the laughter in the parking lot, much different than the town center that you want to put in my backyard, which is going to be a whole different animal. As far as the comment earlier today about lower accidents in the last 2 years over there, I can't help but address this. Number one, it's been closed for most of the last 2 years, and number two, no one drives there anymore because you just can't figure it out. You appoint the BZA. As far as them being autonomous, in every situation that I have had contact with you and the massive amounts of attacks that we've gotten on the internet every time we oppose you in any way, the BZA is right behind you, the zoning commission is right behind you, everybody's right behind you. So it really does appear that you're on the same page. I hope that these people aren't wasting their time by coming to this meeting today. So now you and the BZA, and I have some prepared statements that I'm going to have to read, and I'm going to have to do it really fast because I know I'm going to get cut off. But there's this expensive lawsuit potentially with Riverside Schools. I mean, what does that mean for Concord Township? How much is this going to cost the taxpayers of Concord Township? And again, another example, I believe, in lack of communication and forced to be transparent in the 11th hour, and excuses by you not here today not to take responsibility. I mean, I think that people are more attracted to leadership that is willing to take responsibility. Again, just my 2 cents. I do not understand, and I've read the responsibilities for the trustees, where the trustees can act as land developers and real estate agents. I'm just not aware, and maybe you, Michael Lucas, can tell me where in that that is their job description. A land swap? How is that your area of expertise or your duty? Purchasing 7 acres of land with $1 million of taxpayers' money. I'm moving now onto the JED, which is in my backyard. I'd much rather have a school. 7 acres for $1 million. How is that your job description? And now we found out, and I have it right here, that there's a memorandum of understanding, official document, because your group likes to constantly tell us that we're not telling the truth, saying that you're a member of understanding by you committing to a parcel owner in that area to pay $4.5 million for 4 acres. So that's over $1 million per acre. An additional MOU, 3 more, for 3 more parcels for another almost $2 million. These contracts are for 2 years. So here's the biggest problem. The RFP states that these properties can be leased by the township to the developers, and that is extremely concerning to me, because if the developers aren't taking the risk and we're taking all the risk, that is a very dangerous situation. And again, this is not my opinion. These are RFPs and official documents that, with the proper username and passcode, most people can get into. And again, with the road system, roads that lead to nowhere but a non-existent town center that cost us over $13 million, $6 million of that was paid for by Concord. So I want to clarify one more thing, and this is very important to me because I'm getting attacked for it on the internet. We need to clarify a truth that your supporters will not accept. In June, the town center was zoned for 40 units per acre, okay? Up to 175 acres in the JED.
No.
We talked about here, let me just finish. On June 13th, Paul, you and Connie came to my homeowners association meeting with maps and all kinds of things. My husband is the HOA president for Mount Royal, remember? And you showed us that $320,000 Risinger drawing from Chicago where it fell flat when you presented it to us, but that was for 40 units. Now the acreage, I agree, Paul, that was wishy-washy. You guys really couldn't get a handle on that. But on June 21st here, you agreed in this room that it was 40 units. You agreed that it was up to 75 acres, but the math, remember we had a real hard time with the math. It was real sketchy. And I told you that if it was my math and I was responsible for it and it was my job, I would have to know the math, even though you didn't know the math. You are constantly changing now the vision of how many units are on here, so I can be compassionate to citizens that they're confused because we have an area of land that was originally zoned for no residential, because it was commercial, and then it was zoned for 8 in 2015, but nobody really knows that. You already slid the retail and the residential in there.
And there was no zoning afterwards.
Then the idea and what you wanted to do, your vision, and you said your vision, you called it your vision, was for up to 40 units. We had, you and I personally have had over 2 discussions about that.
Sure.
So we can't say that 40 units. Now, 40 units, an acre, can only go one way, and that's up, okay? So then, after tons of public dissent, you brought it down to 20 acres, 20 units per acre, and then, you know, there's an election coming, and now it was repealed altogether. But we still have this 8 units per acre. So this is very sketchy, and it's very perplexing and confusing to citizens, because it's not common for people of your stature and your professionalism and your position and power to vacillate that much. And it makes me as a citizen very weary. Regarding apartments, you know, it's amazing because now everybody forgets that apartments were mentioned, but however, on that same day, June 21st, I think it was you, Chris, my husband took the podium and you asked him from the dais, Mr. Lacani, if we promised to take apartments off of this plan, would you agree with the plan? And why would you ask him that if there were no apartments? You asked him that because there were potentially apartments that had a potential for apartments at that time. So my last comment before I sit down is the idea that this current zoning town center, what people need to know is that, and what I'm afraid of, is that if this is passed, because this is kind of the rub on it, we don't want, I'll speak for myself, I don't want commercial, I don't want residential and retail in that area at all. There's a tiny area of land that a lot of people don't know about that's about 8-ish% left of commercially undeveloped real estate in our town. We want it to stay that way, so we're not anti-development. I'm not anti-development. I'm into responsible development, proper zoning in proper areas. And I think that with the proper trustees, this area could be extremely lucrative, and I believe that you've been sitting on it for 12 years for this pet project of the town center. So that's what I have. I feel that, I have one more thing to say that I won't say up here. But I think that as long as these meetings, and now this has spilled over into zoning, as long as these meetings are run in a fashion where you get to talk for as long as you want, and then you literally said you were going to put a timer on us, and I've been gavelled twice in this room already, and that important people aren't allowed to speak, you should have at least been polite and said, please take the microphone again, sir, so that he could reply. I don't really think that you're going to get anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Julian Eccles. I live on Button Road in Concord. I'm also a teacher of Riverside Schools. I might add, a very proud teacher of Riverside Schools. I'd like to point out that I've been at Riverside long enough to see, unfortunately, both ends of the spectrum. I was there the morning after we filled one of our levees, and I saw the energy, or I saw the air come out of the balloon. I saw the look in our kids' faces. I saw the buses the following August not rolling up in a school to drop off our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. I saw participation in our sports teams decline because pay to participate was so high. Fast forward that to August 24th this school year. The air's back in the balloon. Great things are ahead. Riverside, we're building new schools. We've passed a levy. We've passed an operating levy. We're bringing back programs for our kids, for your kids. Great things are happening at Riverside Schools. And I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm proud to see it. As a resident of Concord, I'm deeply afraid of the decision which was made. I'm deeply afraid that that decision which was made by Concord Township, point the fingers at BCA if you wish to, point the fingers at the trustee, whoever you'd like to, that decision was made by Concord Township. That decision jeopardizes our children. And that is wrong. That is wrong. I would like to point out a couple of things. It seems to me there's a myth out there. I've seen a couple things on social media where some people are kind of implying that the school district made this purchase on a whim. For the record, I know of 8, and there may be more. Unfortunately, Mr. Kalis isn't allowed to verify my numbers for me, but I know of at least 8 sites which were surveyed, looked at, viewed, and a lot of those were also tested. This school district did its due diligence. This school board went above and beyond what many other places would do, and they found the ideal location. The proposed site is the ideal location. Let me be very clear about that as a resident of Concord. that is the ideal place. It is ideally suited. I realize it's not convenient for everyone. However, it's ideally suited to serve both Leroy community and Concord Township, the students that would come from there. It is ideally located there. The school board did the testing, and unfortunately, the only thing that's holding us up right now is that decision which was made by the BZA. I implore you, whatever influence, whatever impact, whatever you can do, view it from the perspective, we're doing it for our kids, we're doing it for our community. Let's get this done, and let's get it done at that site, because trust me, it is the ideal site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from outside? No, that was it.
No, that's it.
Good evening. I'm Gary Placco. I'm the treasurer of Riverside Schools. And I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but after listening to all the comments, I felt that I needed to say my 2 cents. One of the things that upset us the most about the decision from the zoning board is not really even the zoning board decision. It's more of the responses we got from Concord Township, both in that letter dated September 25th, and also with the press release that was sent out on the 13th of October, I believe, to the News Herald that's posted on ConcordFacts.com. Now, ConcordFacts.com only has your side of the story. You don't have our letter posted on there that we sent in response to your letter. You don't have all the information out there. One of the things, in response to that letter on the 25th of September, I sent a public records request to you guys, and I'm waiting for a response, because some of the things said in that letter we didn't have any record of. For exactly the statement that, you know, we should not purchase the property until we have the conditional use permit. Well, my understanding from reading things on social media and following along, the township purchased 7 acres at Capitol Parkway for their development. Did you get a conditional use permit before you purchased that property? Before you're accusing us of making a mistake by not doing that, but I don't think you guys have done the same thing as well. We could go all night talking about...
It's zoned for what we would build it on. So, I mean, it's already zoned for a certain way.
And the property we're zoned residential like it's supposed to be, we just need a conditional use permit.
Right, so we don't need a conditional use permit.
So you can do whatever you want, but you can
No,
punish
no,
us.
no. It's zoned commercial. It's to be built commercial. Okay? Your property is zoned residential. If you're granted a conditional use permit, you could put a school there. And again, I just want to explain to you. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Not right or wrong, just everybody understands what the facts are. And that's why you had to come and get it. That's why, put a school there, you need to get a conditional use permit. Okay?
I understand. But one of the things I'm just asking the trustees, you know, you say in that letter on the 25th that you'll fully defend the BZA's decision. I would advise you to consider those actions. The ball is now in your court. You can make this right by working with us and our legal counsel to settle this. Don't drag it out in court. Don't cost our taxpayers millions of dollars by delaying this project. We plan on bidding this project out in January or February of 2018 to open in August of 19. If we get thrown off that timeline, it's going to cost us a lot of money. We built 2 identical buildings, they're mirror images of each other, in order to save money. By the Concord location being delayed, it will cost us because we can't bid both projects at the same time. We won't open the schools at the same time. We won't realize those savings in 2019 from that, at that time when those buildings open. So I'm just asking you to really consider the next steps here to make a resolution. And also just to caution you, the information you put out there, and make sure that it's truly accurate information. Thank you.
Okay.
Faith Andrews, 10441 Prouty. I'll make it brief because the school thing is the big ticket thing. We had a business close in Concord. I'm not sure how many jobs. I heard 75. I'm not sure if that's true. It's our only grocery store. I was also at a meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, where Quail Hollow finally announced that they're actually going to be dumping some money into renovations. But it appeared to me that the trustees were just learning about that at the same time I was. New development and mixed-use development and all that kind of thing is really sexy economic development. But business retention and expansion is really where it's at. It's the most bang for your economic buck. And so I'm somewhat concerned, and notwithstanding anything you guys did, to try to talk to Quail or, deal with writers to try and save them. But I would hope that you're focusing quite a bit of your time, because it really should be the #1 priority for any municipality or village or township, to focus on the existing businesses to make sure that they're surviving and thriving and doing whatever you possibly can to make sure that that happens. And if you are doing business retention and expansion correctly, you'll know the problems before they become unsolvable, like the writer's situation. So I don't know what information you have about writers with regard to, I know I heard Mr. Galloway was at a meeting today with someone regarding that. I'd be interested to hear and any BRE efforts that you employed to try and keep writers, to try and work with Quail. And what are you doing, with the existing businesses? I mean, we do have a manufacturing base here. Is there a cutoff? I mean, do they have to be making so many millions of dollars a year before you're gonna, I mean, BRE is sustainable economic development. I hear you guys talk about sustainable economic development with this mixed use. BRE is sustainable. I mean, Writers was our only grocery store. It wasn't the best, but it was ours. I mean, bakery and wine, oh my God, So that's all I have to say.
Faith, those are good questions, and I would tell you that we are constantly engaged in business retention discussions. When it came to Quail Hollow Resort, you were right. We had that meeting of the Eastern Lake County Chamber when their ownership from New Zealand informed us that they were putting in these renovations. It was the first that we had heard about it. But that was not by lack of attempting to have discussion and dialogue with them. I had placed phone calls and sent emails to their management, the team that they had managing the property prior to, that was based in Phoenix. And as we learned in that meeting, they have since, the ownership from Auckland has since terminated them and moved in to run the property themselves. So as part of that, I mean, we had meetings with the county because we had lots of concerns about the condition of Quail.
Quail Resort.
The resort, not the country club.
And I'll just additionally add that, our fire department was over there because of some issues that existed, which prompted us from contacting their management group. And my guess is that eventually got back to the owners, that resulted in their change.
Yes, so there were some concerns there. There were some slow pay months and quarters that Amy could tell you about in terms of taxes. So we had actually started meetings with the county and the Port Authority about what can we do in the event that that hotel was to close. What would be our proactive position in terms of either finding another hotelier, finding another appropriate use for that property, so that it wouldn't end up sort of a black hole right there at the doorstep of Concord Township. So we were out there working on that. So getting that news that day was a great relief to us that that they, and we've subsequently reached out to the ownership there to find out what it is we can do to help, and what and how we can help promote what they're trying to do. As far as the riders situation, which is terribly unfortunate for those, especially that like to get their cigars there previously. We are actively engaged in conversations and trying to look for another grocer. I've had conversations with, in a meeting with, as an example, like Mustard Seed Market, and I was at a meeting today with a representative of one of the grocers in Northeast Ohio, and trying to see if we could talk about Concord as a possible destination of expansion for them. So, and we will continue to do that in terms of reaching out to other entities, in terms of trying to fill that space so that we have a full-service grocery store. You know, I mean, the challenge will be when you talk about business expansion and retention, is that space in terms of how many grocers it would fit versus grocers that might be interested in the market. There are grocers that might be interested in Concord, but they wouldn't necessarily be interested in that space. So we have to sort of approach it from two ways, and work to figure out what to do with that space and or attracting additional or another grocer to the community. So we are engaged in that, and we will continue to pursue that with all due diligence.
Hi, I'm Melissa Malacher. I am Director of Curriculum for the district. I live in Leroy. I live in the district. My kids go to school here, and I'm a graduate of Riverside, so I am born and bred here. I just have a question for clarification. The site that we purchased is zoned R4. So a school is, and this might be a question for you, Mr. Lucas, a school is something that's allowed in R4 zoning, correct?
Well, in R4 zoning, first of all, it's permitted by conditional use.
Okay, so but it is allowed there, but you have to get a conditional use permit because it's not currently being used for that reason.
No.
No? Okay.
No, there's two types of uses that are allowed in the R4.
Okay.
The first classification is permitted uses.
Okay.
All right, and the R4, as you would expect, contains residential property use, etc. And then there's a series of uses that are allowed by conditional use. And one of those is a school.
Okay.
So if you looked at the chart for the R4 district, you would see a series of uses, and then in the zoning chart, there's P for permitted uses, and then there's C for conditional uses. Now, permitted uses are absolutely permitted as a matter of right. The conditional uses are you apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals under the state statute for townships, and then you look at, generally, two separate classifications, two separate areas of the conditional use permit section, which is section 13 that's been referenced. All right, you look at what are the general conditions that have to be met, and I'm going to use the school as an example for the school. So that's 1305. And then a lot of the uses that are allowed by conditional use have their own separate conditions as well, and that's the 1310 that's been mentioned. So the school, as an abstract matter, to avoid, we're talking about litigation, as an abstract matter, if you want a school in the R4 district, you look at section 13 and what's required, and if I was representing a school, for instance, I'd be looking at, first of all, what are the general conditions that are required to be met? And then secondly, I would go then, okay, those are the general conditions I know I have to meet in order to have the school put in this property. And then I would look, are there specific uses that have their own specific fact-sensitive conditions? And you go down, usually they're like a church, a daycare center, and the school is one of them in the R4 district, and that's where you then go from the general conditions under 1305, and you go down to the specific conditions for a school under 13.10. Those are the conditions. You have to present evidence to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they determine whether those conditions have enough evidence has been permitted under those conditions to grant the conditional use permit. So that was a little long-winded, but...
No, that's okay. So I just wanted to be clear that it is an allowed use for the property, that it just has to be approved by the BZA.
It's allowed if the conditions are met.
Okay, correct. Yeah.
Versus-
Just, I mean, we couldn't build on a commercial piece of property because that's not an allowed use for commercial property, right? Okay, so
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that that's what
Yep.
R4 meant.
Yep.
And then the only other thing that I would bring up is this situation where we're getting into the litigation between the school district and the township. The only people that are going to lose are the biggest are the residents of Concord. You're going to be hit tax dollar-wise from both sides. I mean, this is a really tough situation to be in. The district stands to lose out on what has already been spent and could be close to $1 million into the project. Now we're going to spend money on litigation. The trustees are going to spend money on litigation. It's a situation where the citizens of Concord are losing on both ends. This is a winless situation for the people in this area. So I would hope that there would be a resolution that would happen before we get to the court situation. But based on some of the information that we've received, I didn't believe that there was any, and based on what you said, Mr. Galloway, a way to resubmit an application. That was my first question when it came back as a no. Can we tweak some things? Can we do some things different and resubmit? And the answer was no. The only recourse is to go to court.
I didn't say that.
No, not you said that. That was the response that I was told. Okay, that was a response. So I understand what you're saying, that the only option is under Ohio Revised Code, that's.
If you want to appeal
Yeah,
a
if we
decision.
have, well, I mean, what is our other option? I don't understand, I mean, now we're arguing semantics. We don't like what you said, we aren't happy with your decision, what would you call that? Would you call that an appeal of what the BZA's decision?
Well, an appeal.
Well, legal. I'm not trying to be cute about this, but not to beat this into the ground, you have a very, very experienced school district lawyer, David Riley. And David Riley knows the options that are available, all right? And I'm uncomfortable having my clients, because of the pending litigation, indicate to you, which they shouldn't do anyway, because you have your own lawyer, and I wouldn't do it either. Your own lawyer can certainly discuss those questions.
And I understand what my lawyer is saying. I don't understand what he has already said here, that our only recourse is not an appeal. So we have other options.
I will say as a matter of
Yeah.
fact that you have other options.
Okay.
Can you tell the rest of us what those are?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I don't understand. What do you call it then? We don't like what you said. We don't have to call it an appeal if you would not like to use that word. So what are the other options?
Well, and again, the appeal process aside, the decision could be to not appeal, i.e. not litigate against Concord Township based on the BZA decision. The school district, as I understand it, has the ability to tweak the application and reapply.
Okay, so if we don't, because that was not clear either, and I will say everybody on our side was not aware of that either, because that was my very first question was, can we resubmit? And the answer was no. The only recourse that we have is find another property or appeal. So we can resubmit. That's what I'm hearing you say, is we can resubmit.
My understanding is, yes, you're besides litigation, your two options are find another property, which obviously, I was also open to in terms of proposing the idea of a land swap as a means of, so that the school district wouldn't be out the dollars in terms of what they purchased on the property potentially. And the other would be to modify the application, modify the plan, and to resubmit.
Okay, and is there going to be some guidance on what needs to be resubmitted, or it's just a crapshoot every time you do it?
No, I mean, it's not. That's the...
Okay, and I'm not, I totally, and that was probably a poor choice of words. But are we just rolling the dice and we don't know?
Here's what would be my advice. I would have an attorney here. I would have him quarterback this matter. You'd be going through the conditions of 1305A and say, here's how we meet 1305A, and then you would continue to go through 1305B, and here's how we can meet the conditions of B, and you go all the way down till L, and then you start with 1310. And again, I know Mike is not happy with my comments here, but that should be about a 5-hour hearing, you know? That should be significant. That is a lot of information. That's a lot of information that has to be understood by that Board of Zoning Appeals.
I watched the meeting after the fact, just I'm sure like a lot of people did, go back and to see, well, watch it for my own self. And you know, and again, as he mentioned, I've done BZA hearings, not in this community, but with clients on other development projects and things of that nature. And I'm not an attorney, but the process that you go through is you have your code, or how I've always handled those hearings is you have your code, it's laid out, each item, you know, A through Z, on the conditions that have to be met. And I create a written statement in terms of each item, and I submit that to that board. And I address each item line by line in terms of how I'm meeting that code. I present that in that meeting. I present that evidence in that meeting, all the evidence that I have. And again, I can't speak to what the BZA's decisions, why they made the decisions they made, but when I watched that meeting, a lot of those things didn't happen, in my opinion. The case was not all that information was brought forward in that hearing the way it would have if, I mean, for example,
Well, here,
you have an
excellent
excellent attorney, according to Mike Lucas, what he says. There was you didn't bring legal counsel to the thing. There was a traffic studies on that was presented. But there were other studies done, like a geotechnical and a phase 1. None of those were submitted to the board.
So if all of that information would have been submitted, would the board have made their decision that evening? Is it typical for a board to perhaps table a decision based on, because you're talking about a whole lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
I can't imagine that they would review, and I don't know, maybe you can answer this. Do they then say, okay, we need to review this 5-hour testimony and these 400 documents? There's no possible way we can make a decision tonight.
They can do, certainly, they have the right to do that. I've seen that done.
So that could have been done that night also.
If
they didn't feel like they had enough information to accurately answer, they could have done it that night also.
So I can tell you.
Hard to believe that we're a family when the decision gets made that night, when really you're talking about, hey, we just want some more information.
But two things I would say. One, we've done that regularly as trustees when matters come before us in terms of either new information or volume, where we have a lot of input. We will frequently table matters to bring up at a later date. I will tell you the other thing is that's very common in BZA hearings and all zoning hearings is the applicant asks for it to be tabled so that they can address the concerns and comments and things that are brought to the attention of that meeting. I've done that in BZA meetings that I have done for clients where information comes forward and you want to say, you know what, let's do a timeout, let's come back in 2 weeks or at the next meeting and present some additional information and respond to some of the things that were raised today so that we can give the board a full understanding of what it is we're asking them to decide on. That's extremely common for zoning boards like a BZA to table and for applicants to request that. That happens all the time. And so, again, I can't speak to why the request to table it wasn't made. I don't know.
Or why your board didn't request to table it if they didn't have enough information.
We're not really.
I mean, that
and
goes
again,
you're right, it goes both ways too.
I cannot speak. I don't know why. Right. I don't know why. So, so yes, I mean that is not an unusual procedure when you have something of this magnitude, either for a board or the applicant to ask for a tabling and to come back and revisit. And so, but as far as other options, there are other options beyond the litigation, and we will continue to work through with your board to.
It's just disheartening because I went to the Painesville Township Board of Zoning meeting and I was the one that did that application, went through everything with them. Bam, I was out the door in 12 minutes, moved me to the top of the agenda, and this has become quite a spectacle in Concord.
But you were also dealing with a site that had a school.
We also, we still have, we have the waste treatment plant there. I mean, we have all the same essentially components in that neighborhood. So Thank you.
Very good.
Mark Isofano, Morley Road. So is the BZA's decision matrix, that's not public record? Like right now, we don't know what general conditions were met and what specific conditions weren't met. Is that accurate?
All we have is their decision of denial, and again, I think someone read it, and I'll look for you exactly what the BZA did say.
Well, they basically said they didn't feel the general conditions in 1305 were met. That was their statement.
I have it right here. I can just hand it to Mark. Is that all right?
Sure, that's fine.
There you go, Mr. Stefano. Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to understand, as far as if I'm Riverside, I want to know specifically what was not met. And are those general conditions general? Are the specific conditions specific, or are they open to interpretation? So right now, is it a black or white, where they could say this specific condition was not met and it's clear, or is it open to interpretation? I'm just trying to educate myself on.
Well, I think everything is open to interpretation. It's going to be a subjective test. However, I think what you'll have some definitive statements is when they do the findings of fact and conclusions of law, you will have something greater than what you have in your hand there, that not only will be reviewed by both the attorneys, but by the judge, and then they'll move forward on litigation.
Okay.
So you'll have some more specifics at one point.
So again, do we know if the BZA's decision matrix, that's not something that's public record? They don't say, okay, here's the code, these are the 18 things that weren't met. These are the 18
They do it right here in the open and made that decision. So, I mean, if you watch the video, you can see their at least their discussion or lack of discussion, depending on how you see it, and then their decisions written down.
Okay.
And again, some BZAs, I've been a part of decisions where a BZA gives very little, reason in terms of their statement. I've been a part of BZA hearings that, each member has gone around and given a detailed reason as to why they're voting one way or another. It's really up to that board on how they want to handle their explaining their vote, or if they want to explain their vote. I don't think Ohio Revised Code requires them to. But yeah, so I mean it's.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So if I'm told no, I just want to know why I'm told no. So hopefully that'll be the starting point where they say these are the 17 reasons, and then they can work through it.
And I totally understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying. I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Gerald. I live at 10885 Bradley Court. I didn't really want to talk tonight, but I'm here and I feel that it's incumbent upon me to speak. I'm here in a number of different capacities. I'm a Riverside parent. I have 3 children. My youngest is a senior and will graduate. All 3 will graduate from Riverside, and I'm happy about that. I've been involved with the schools since they were very little as a PTO treasurer. I've been a co-chair for Levy that passed, that I was very proud of. I've been a treasurer for school board campaigns, and have been just proud to be a part of the process. One last thing that I did, I was a part of the commission that was engaged as parents and business people to get together to try to figure out what to do with our schools, because I actually went on a tour and looked at all the schools, and I know the schools are in terrible, terrible disrepair. Just terrible. So I was on that commission to try and find a solution for all this. So I even went so far as I am a realtor with Marcy. I'm not sure if she's still here. And I was a part of that commission and presented a few sites. I was also in industry, sat down with the school board to present a particular site to them that didn't work out. And I know that the township and the school district have, been in conversation. I know the processes that the district goes through. I know the processes that the township goes through because I am a member of the BZA. Because of my relationship with the school district, I recused myself that night. I did not want to be a part of that decision because I've been so close with the school district. I actually was not at that meeting at all. I did read the minutes twice, and I'm not here to take one side or the other. I'm simply here to try to, I guess, you know, be the anchor and try to balance things a little bit. I joined the BZA back in 2009, and it's really been a cool experience. I am a property rights advocate, and our board consists of 5 people, and we all have our different opinions. But one thing I will tell you about the process is that we do have certain factors that we follow. We are commissioned to follow the zoning resolution, and we are commissioned to find, you know, with variance requests, we follow these Duncan factors, and we vocalize during the meeting what our logic is in coming up with the decision that we come up with. And we're not just giving our opinion, we're not haphazardly doing that. Now, I can't speak specifically for that night, I just read the minutes twice. But I just, based on my experience since '09, this is the way we do things. We have a couple of attorneys on our board who are great additions, who help us go through those legal steps to come up with answers. So I'm going to say that on behalf of the BZA, and everybody's, you know, grouping the BZA in with the township, and, you know, the township with the district, and we are a family. But being from an Italian family, I know there are disagreements, and that's what happens sometimes. And we have legal entities, the district, the township, we all have our processes. The process with the township is that this conditional use of this particular site required conditional use for a school, so we had to go to the BZA. Now, I know the school district has their processes. We all do. But we are in, this is the American way. I don't want to pontificate here, but I mean, we see it all through our government, from the grassroots level up to the federal level. There are always two sides that are just coming at each other. And, you know, being that we're a family, being at the grassroots level particularly, it would be nice if we could come together. We are, I scribbled down so many things, so just bear with me. I'm trying to be logical in my presentation here. So I will say also that in the process with the school district, just being an outsider looking in and knowing what y'all had to go through to get to decisions, it's my opinion, just my opinion as a realtor, as a citizen, that the school district, it was incumbent on them to have representation. If I was representing them, I never would have let them consummate a sale without taking care of this conditional use permit. This should have been a contingency to the contract. It never should have happened. That's my opinion based on my experience in the industry. I think that there should be the district needs to have a fiduciary representative, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a realtor, whomever, but that should have been a part of your process. And I think, and I'm sorry to say, Jim, I think it was just a little bit irresponsible. Now, that being said, I can understand how the woman who's here was saying her blood was boiling, where she's looking up here at these folks who are really doing their best to try to run our township. And if it's one thing, I'm sorry, my mouth is getting dry here. I don't know if we have any water anywhere. I only have a few more things to say. A part of the process to get this land, we have due diligence. You guys should, the district, I shouldn't say you guys, we, I'm a part of the district too, went through the EPAs, the appraisals, you know, looking at the ingress and egress and the grade, you know, everything. You did your due diligence, but this was one thing where it wasn't done. So in moving forward, in looking at these folks, and I'm going back to my point here, the alleged arrogance. These folks These folks are on the ball. They are trying to do their best. We have a Capitol Parkway issue where there are two sides coming together. We've got this issue where two sides coming together. These folks are working for us. They are trying to do it. The comprehensive plan has been in place since '06. They are trying to do things for us. And they want this school to be for us. I've seen the conversations. We've got a problem here. What's the ideal site? I am not an advocate of government getting involved in business to make it happen. That's just not me at all. But we do need to work together. Who's responsible for this problem? We all are, to a certain extent. He said, she said, emails, social media, internet. It's making us all crazy. It's too much. Oh, thank you. It's too much. I'm just going to finish up here. It's too much. So we got this situation. There's no communication. We've got it. Please, people. We've got a perfect storm of controversy. It's becoming more and more incendiary. So what do we need to do? I hate to see it go to litigation. It would be terrible. Terrible for the whole community. If there's one thing I always espouse at the school district meetings is that we have 5 communities that need to come together for this school district. And it was always hard to get them to come together. Now we are coming together, and now we need to bring the township with us. So what do we need to do? We need to sit down and we need to find a solution. We don't need litigation. We don't need he said, she said, and getting on social media and disparaging everybody. It's a load of crap. As my father-in-law says, the more you stir a pile of crap, the more it stinks. So let's stop doing that, and let's sit down and find a solution.
Anybody else want to speak? All right, I'm going to close the public portion. Future meetings and announcements, we will have the October 26th, 6:30 p.m., the 9th annual Halloween Haunt at Gristmill Village. Tuesday, October 31st at 8:30 a.m., we will have the staff meeting here in the conference room at 6 to 8. In the evening, there will be trick-or-treating in Concord Township Community. Our fire department and the sheriff's department will be out there. Wednesday, November 1st, 6:30 p.m., we will have the trustees' office hours and our trustees meeting at 7:30 p.m.
I would just really quick on the Halloween haunt, point out that is still on. I know there's been some questions because Riders was a big supporter of that, but the township has made some modifications to that program with the property owner CRM, and I know Recreation is stepping in to sort of rework that so that it will go on and it'll have all the same goodies and all the good time for the kids. So that just stress that, because I know some people have asked me if it's still going to happen or in what format. So it'll still be there, and it'll still have all the good stuff that everybody's come to expect.
All right, I'm going to entertain a motion for executive session with a roll call for purposes of discussing pending litigation.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Luna?
Yes.
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Malcheski?
Yes. And we'll close the meeting later after the pending litigation.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.